Hi, everyone. Welcome into our second episode of the Fourth and One podcast. This is Cole McDonald here with my co-host, Brian Kenny. We're excited tonight to bring you another episode, and we'll be talking about tips and tricks to offensive and defensive pass interference. Brian came to me a couple months ago with the idea for this podcast, trying to get good conversations around different officiating topics for our association, the Wisconsin River Officials Association, sorry. And tonight we brought in a guest. His name's Cameron Bump, a well-respected official from the northern half of the state, and we're excited to bring him on and talk about defensive and offensive pass interference. First off, I'll let Cam kind of introduce himself and how he got into officiating and what he's doing now. Great to have you, Cam.
Hey, great to be here. It's a beautiful night in Wisconsin, and wouldn't think of it doing anything else besides talking about football. So, I live in Eau Claire right now, and I grew up in the area, Little Mondovi, Wisconsin, moved around the state a little bit, but really wanted to come back to the Chippewa Valley and raise a family. Married my wife Kim, and we have 5 kids. And I've officiated football for 22 years, and it doesn't seem like it's been that long. But in those first few years of officiating, I had some influential people in my life. My first crew was in Stevens Point. It was actually when I first started working football. Those guys taught me so much about the culture of the crew, your professionalism, that's a brotherhood of officials, the family and the mentorship that they gave me just starting out. And I just want to say their names. They're pretty good guys, and I think they're all retired now from officiating. But the crew chief was Dave Dollinger, and then my wings, Tom Ordens, and umpire Mike Farmer, and back judge Dave Ackley. All really good officials, and it really showed me the ropes on just how to present yourself and how to officiate high school football. And then when I was moving around the state and didn't really have a grasp on what I should do next, I started working football in Madison area, just subbing in where I could. And a guy by the name of Kent Holmquist, and anybody who knows Kent calls him Homer. And he was probably my first real mentor in the ins and outs of football and officiating, and he's just a guy who says what he thinks, and he says it with the intent of helping you out and really getting you going in the right direction. And the things I took from him was don't take yourself too seriously. It's a game, but you want to be professional and you want to do your best. Look the part. Give 100%. Coaches and fans, they see if you're kind of giving half the game or half of your effort. Give all of your effort. Look presentable. And through that experience, I made a good enough impression on him that when I applied to get into college officiating, he requested that I be on his crew. Well, it was a tough drive for me. I was in the Eau Claire area. The rest of the crew was in southern Wisconsin, but it was important enough for me to stay connected with that, just to continue to to learn how to officiate and take the next steps in my officiating career. And third, when I moved back up to Eau Claire, I trying to get into the high school game locally here, and I ran into a former college classmate of mine, Chad McKeithrin, and eventually got connected with his crew on a substitute basis and then full time. And the crew chief was Jason Frank, and he's now a Division I official. And just one of those guys who probably knows every rule there is and applies them well. In fact, this is a little known fact. He was the first Division I official to throw a targeting foul and have that. That was the first year they had the mandatory ejection, and he was the first official, as far as we can tell, to have thrown that foul. But the things I got from him is never let the game be too big. It's whether it's a high school game or a college game, it's football. If it's a youth game, it's football. Don't let the game get too big for you. And one thing that's really stuck with me and I think helped me mature as an official is he told me once that you can have a really good game without having a flag on the field. And when that says a lot, because what that tells me is, yes, the officials are there to adjudicate the game, but we don't have to take over the game. Sometimes the game dictates it, but a lot of times we don't have to try and insert ourselves into the game. But with that, he also helped me get into the college game through connections and just by mentoring me into how to be a better college official ahead of time. So right now I'm the back judge on Tim Polson's crew in the MFOA, and I've been doing college football for 10 years. One of the things I want to do this next couple of years is really focus on two things. One is the college game, but also watching my son play high school football here at Eau Claire Memorial. So I won't be working Friday nights per se, but I'll be out on the field or out watching the games, my son's games the next couple of years as he's playing football. And then lastly, I just recently took up the president to lead the Indianhead. That's working together as officials. Sorry. We just have to start working together as officials, and that's being an association is one of the best ways to continue to hone our craft, talk to other officials. How do we handle certain situations? And we have to do that in community. And so that's one of my goals, is to build that community of officials in the Eau Claire area.
And that's really what we're trying to do in the Monroe and La Crosse County and Juneau and Columbia and Sauk is kind of the same thing. Cameron is, trying to have a good professional development, instill relationships and officials and create camaraderie, because it's just like everything. If you enjoy the people you're doing something with, you're going to do it more and you're going to become more effective. And I think having best practices around offensive pass interference and defensive pass interference is really important, because this is a very difficult rule for people to interpret. So because we have 5-person crews in Wisconsin, that's probably going to be the way things are going to be for a while, until we get, a pool of officials. We talk about this in our crew about how do we identify the competitive matchups based on the number of eligible receivers we have. We know we have a back judge. We know we have 2 wing officials, and the wing officials are, being asked to do a lot at the line of scrimmage, with RPOs and with, really fast players and lots of pistol type offenses that stack a lot of receivers, multiple formations, trips, and twins. The wing officials have to stay home a lot longer than what maybe they did in the past. What are some little tricks and tips that you would recommend for the pre-snap process and keys?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think I would even go further back and talk about pre-gaming. I think it's really important that the back judge and wings are on the same page, and the federation has established keys. The back judge has the widest guy on a strong side, but depending on your crew, maybe there's another way you want to handle that. A lot of times, you said that, wings have a lot in front of them. And as on a high school crew, I'm the line judge, and so I know exactly what you're talking about. And so, our crew, we get together and we talk about how we're going to handle certain situations or how we're going to handle certain formations. A lot of times if we have a competitive slot receiver, we'll have a back judge watch that close, and the wings can then focus on line movement and line play at the snap. But I think, and this is just my opinion, I think if you have a back judge that's got experience, understands the game, they can be a very valuable resource on the field. The back judge has a lot of flexibility in where they're able to look, what they can see, the angles they have, and you're further away from the action, so you have a wider view, let's say, better ability to snap over to one side and see action. But going back to your question of what do we see at the snap, if we've got a defensive back challenging a receiver, I'm going to look at that right away. I'm going to make sure that receiver gets off the line. And if they're not, well, what's happening? Is that defender holding him up, or is it just making it a bona fide block? So trying to decipher that at the snap. I've seen a lot of this is commentary for back judge. I see some back judges like to favor one side or the other, depending on where, if the ball's in the hash, then they'll line up on the hash. As a back judge, I like to stay in the middle of the field as much as I can, because with the offenses today, the athletes that are on the field, they can get from one side of the field to the next pretty quick. And if you're starting on a side of the field, you're really limiting your ability to see the angles on the other side. So I like to keep that, even though it may feel uncomfortable, I like to keep that focus in the middle of the field and then pivot either way as I need to. I like to stay about 25 yards from the ball, and then as the play develops, move back from there. The last thing I want is to have someone behind me. That would be a failure. But we want to make sure that once we have the snap happen, that we see what's developing. I don't like to stick on my key just to watch them run. I want to see where there's action, where there's collisions, where there's contact, and I want to watch that. Again, the offense has restrictions for pass interference at the snap. It begins at the snap. The defense does not. So, contact that if there's contact that the defense causes, that's not necessarily a foul. Now, if they hold, they got a jersey grab, or they tackle the receiver, well, that's a foul. But just because there's contact doesn't mean there's a foul.
That's a really good point, Cameron. And I was a wide receiver in high school and in college, and I remember, always knowing as a receiver, I had an immediate advantage because I know the route and I know where I'm going. So if I beat a defender with a good head fake and I know where I'm going, there's a pretty good chance they're going to try to cheat to catch up their feet. I always remembered that rhyme, and I still think about that a lot with, an indicator for DPI. I think sometimes too, wing officials, they get really antsy because they see receivers going downfield, and they're caught between this quandary of, do I go downfield with that receiver because they're getting further away from me, or do I stay here because the quarterback is sprinting out my way and there's probably somebody in the flat, there's a safety valve. That's a tough one for officials that are newer to the line of scrimmage and they want to leave, but then they don't realize that the back judge is helping them, and they have to have kind of like a song and dance almost.
That's a good point. That trust between the back judge and the wings, you have to know that the guy's got your back. And, when you have that action in front of you, it's a matter of priority. What's more important at that moment? So if you have a runner, your blocks in front of you are more important than a guy running downfield, because your back judge is going to have that. And if you've got a good chemistry with your back judge, they're going to pick up stuff that they know that the play is going your way. They're going to have their eyes over there and watching stuff that's maybe downfield and stuff that you're not going to be able to get. And again, that comes back to the pregame. How you're communicating with your wings and making sure you're covering areas in different situations like that.
I think that's all good stuff. I think every conversation we have, whether it's in a meeting or on the previous podcast, always comes down to trust. Like, we always come back to, we have to trust our partners. We have to trust the process. We need to talk about these things before the game. So, once you've got your pre-snap positioning down, you've identified those competitive matchups. Cam, what's your process during the play for determining whether something is actually pass interference or whether that's incidental contact?
Yeah, no, I think, in my opinion, is if I'm looking at it from a back judge now. If a back judge doesn't have an opinion on a play, good or bad, they haven't been paying attention. You have to see and then have an opinion on whether that was legal, whether that was close, and it deserves a talk to, or if that was a foul and it deserves a flag. But contact, like I said before, isn't necessarily a foul. And I think what's important to be able to differentiate that is that in the college game, this is where I first started seeing it, but it really made my high school game better by when I was able to put contact into categories. And for guys that maybe haven't been introduced to it, I'll just talk about some of those real quick. Main key is a defender playing the ball or not? If it's not playing the ball and there's early contact, well, that's a foul. If he has no idea the ball is coming, he knocks into the guy before the ball gets there, that's a foul. If a defender is playing through the back of the receiver before the ball gets there, that's illegal. If you grab on the receiver, you got jersey pull, you're restricting them somehow with hand grabbing, shoulder, elbow. You're restricting that receiver from moving. When the ball's in the air, that's a foul. One that is sometimes hard to judge is what is called the hook and turn. Just because the guy's got a hand on the back isn't a foul, but when he turns the receiver, turns his hips, that's a foul. And that's a hard one to judge sometimes. Some guys throw on that. In fact, I did last year. I threw on a hook and turn that wasn't a hook and turn. And on video, looking at it on video after the game, was kind of kicking myself. But so that's one where you have to slow down and watch to see what happens, what actually happens. Another one is what they call an arm bar. again, you're sticking your arm out and holding that receiver back, holding his arms down, just restricting that receiver from catching the ball. Then the last one that the defender can have is what they call a cutoff. And that's where the defender cuts the receiver off right at the sideline, basically. So, those are 6 categories that if you can put that contact in that category, then there's a chance you got a foul. If you can't, say you have tangle feet or incidental contact, the defender's playing the ball and they run into each other. That's legal. That's not a foul. So we want to make sure we see the play, categorize the contact, and then judge whether that was a foul or not. For the offense, we've got 3 different kind of contact that is illegal. One would be blocking downfield while the ball's in the air, is usually one that draws a foul. You'll see a pick play where a receiver, the receiver has to avoid the defender. So if they're running through and they run into the defensive back that's guarding some other guy, that's a pick play, and that's offensive pass interference. And then lastly, the classic push off, which is different than extending your arm and maintaining distance. So if you can imagine this, if your receiver going downfield, defender's closing, receiver sticks his hand out and maintains distance, that's not a foul. But if that defender gets close and that receiver pushes or puts his hand on and is extending his arm, creates separation, well, that's a push off, and that would be illegal contact. That would be offensive pass interference. So that's how, that's what I'm looking at. When I see contact, I want to put it in a category. If it's not in the category, then chances are it's probably not pass interference.
Yeah, it's all really good stuff. I think, the more you see more of those plays in each bucket, I think they probably get easier to call. How do you deal with, I think defenders have gotten smart over the last, I don't know how many years, but they know that the sideline is their friend. And it seems like they ride wide receivers subtly towards the boundary just to, make them run out of real estate. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, well, it's if they're good at it, it's probably not a foul. They're trying to direct that receiver. Now the receiver, once if they go out of bounds, then we're dealing with other things. But if that receiver gets ridden out of bounds, that's different than getting run out of bounds. So when I talk about riding someone out of bounds, that's kind of like boxing them out. So it's that kind of action where the defender is contacting them, pushing them out. If the ball's not in the air, well, then that's not interference. But if the ball's in the air and he does that and he boxes them out, that's what I was describing as the cutoff
route. Yeah.
So, but that does happen, and with 5, it's really hard because back judge doesn't really have a great angle at that. You really have to depend on your wing to be looking upfield when the ball's in the air. Look upfield and see what's happening there, and try to catch that. But again, you got to make a judgment call on is that defender playing the ball, and is he trying to create an advantage? And those are really tough calls to make because you're trying to judge a couple different things there. And if I'm in a situation where I'm gonna see that defender playing the ball, his eyes are up, maybe his arms are up, I'm probably gonna give the benefit of the doubt that he's making a bona fide effort to the ball. If his arms are out and he's trying to his attention is to the receiver, then I'm going to say he's trying to cheat.
Yeah, and I still think back, like high school football, there's so many subtle indicators at the line of scrimmage. Most receivers that are really good at what they're doing are going to use head fakes, or some kind of body juke, to get the defender to, open their hips, or, get them into a quick back pedal, and then they're going to try to open them up. And whenever I see that, it's almost like your radar is going off that defender is probably more than likely going to attempt to commit DPI, because they know that they have to cheat to get caught back up, because they got their hips opened up too quickly and they couldn't stay in their back pedal. I remember Jason Nickleby talking at a clinic that I ran a couple of years ago in Sun Prairie about when you see four hands, that, it's pretty hard to look at one of those people and go, you fouled. It's almost like all bets are off there. It's just like, the principle of verticality in basketball.
Sure.
Why do we want to disrupt something when we see four sets of hands? Such a good conversation, because these plays are not going to get any easier for us.
No. And I, when I think about defensive pass interference in particular, it's almost always using the hands. If they're using the hands, arms, if they're using them, then there's a chance they could be interfering. If they're using position, and their contact is other part of their body, it may not, like the chances are it's probably not defensive pass interference. But if they're using their hands, it's kind of like what you're saying. They're beat somehow, so they're trying to grab, they're trying to hold a guy's arm down. So their upper body is more involved with that interference contact than lower body.
We all talk about, we're going to miss stuff. I mean, there's 5 versus, 22. So we have to think about, moving on. How do you, what advice do you have, Cameron, about, you miss a call and you got to move on, right? We got the rest of the game to focus on. Any strategies about how to move on?
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. That's never happened to me before.
Yeah, none of us have done that, right?
No, it's when the hardest thing for me to get over is when I call something that's not there. Because that tells me that I was really reaching. I didn't see the whole play, and I wasn't handling my area or my keys, and I wasn't applying the judgment that I needed to apply. So it all falls apart when I call something that when I watch the video, it's not there. That's hard. You don't necessarily know that during the game, but that's a really difficult one. That's not one you want to have. If you're not calling, but there is contact, and you're thinking to yourself, man, that I should have got that one. To me, the way to get back into the game is to have a really steady pregame routine or pre-snap routine. So, if I'm a back judge, I just had a big play that I think I may have blown. Then, I'm going back to, okay, I'm counting my guys. I'm looking at the clock. I'm looking at formation when that comes up. I try to get back into the rhythm of the game, because we've all had it happen. I kind of joked about it, but we've all had it happen where we did something and we're kicking ourselves, and it sticks with us for a few plays. And the quickest way that I found to get back into the game and compose yourself is to get back into your pre-snap routine and just keep doing that until you get that feeling out that you've screwed something up. And you know what? We've all screwed up. The players screw up. The coaches screw up. people get mad at us when we screw up. So what? We have to get past that, because if one play, one mistake is going to turn into another 10 plays where we've missed more, well, then it just compounds itself. So getting back into that routine, having that short memory of that screw up, is what we need to do. And I talk about, I talked earlier about calling something that isn't there. Not calling something that maybe could have been called is a little bit easier to handle, because if you didn't call a foul, you obviously didn't think that there was enough contact for a foul. So that's easier to handle. But still, if you're second guessing yourself, you're going to be thinking about that for the next 3-4 plays if you don't get over it.
Yeah, unfortunately, those missed calls are coming for us all, and if you haven't had one yet, they're coming your way. So I think that's really good advice on how to get over them. So that's just part of this gig, which we all love. I think we've gone over a really nice synopsis of before the play, during the play, and then you kind of kicked one, and how do we get over it? Any parting thoughts or other tips and tricks we haven't talked about, Cam, that you want to talk about before we sign off?
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of things that if you want to get better as an official, there's so many resources out there. This podcast is one of them, but you can pull up YouTube and watch videos, watch guys, talking about a certain play. I think being a part of an association is really important. Talking about the last game, talking about a complicated foul situation, you get that in an association, and so I encourage any football official, if you're not a part of an association, find an association, and that's nearby, or something that's where you can get in with other guys and just talk about the game and how to do it. I think one of the more revolutionary things, at least in my game, was watching myself on video. How I move, what I should be looking at, and what am I missing during the play. You can see that stuff on video. A lot of times the video isn't great quality, depending on the school you're getting it from, but it gives you a different perspective on what you saw on the field. And when you watch it on video, you remember seeing it from your perspective, at least I do. And then you see it from the sideline view or the end zone view, and you get a different perspective on it. And that helps you be more complete. And, I think one of the things that, I've taken up the last few years as I've gotten older is I need to physically take care of myself. And so, at 40, I started running distance just to be in better shape. But I found that if I'm not lifting weights, that you get weak. And with the athletes on the field, and we're getting older, we need to take care of our bodies. Being physically fit is it's really important, and I almost think it's kind of a requirement nowadays with the athletes that are in the field. We have to keep up, and being in good physical shape, keeping your body in shape is one of those key components. And I think as an official, or if I'm a coach and I see an official who isn't taking care of himself, he can't keep up with the play, I have a hard time trusting that judgment. And that's just the way it is. And so we need to look the part that way. Knowing the rules, that's important. Good defense should be penalized. We've already talked about that. And I think being mechanically sound, being in position to make calls. We talked a little bit about, what I position myself as a back judge, but, I think when you're mechanically sound and your crew is mechanically sound, even with five guys out there, you can have a very well officiated game when you're all on the same page and you're following sound mechanics. And I mentioned it before, but I've come to learn that if I'm uncertain about contact or situation, and I'm not certain that it's a foul, I'm not gonna throw a flag. I need to see it, see the whole play. Don't think it's there, make it be there. And so, those are some of the things that, it's the bigger picture, if you will, of officiating, and that can transcend to not just offensive and defensive pass interference, but it can extend into all parts of our game.
Well, this episode should be released sometime this week. We'll get it out. We'll get a YouTube link, and Cameron, you can help us promote it around the state of Wisconsin. We'd appreciate that. And our next podcast we'll be recording on September 29th, which is a Thursday night. We'll be having Brian Harrell from Akron, Ohio. Brian has ties to Wisconsin. He used to teach at UW Green Bay. Brian's very active on social media. He's a college football official and very active in his high school stuff that's going on in Ohio. So we're excited to have Brian joining us. And we also have a virtual clinic that we're going to be running. Brian's going to be helping us with that. It's going to be 3-part virtual clinic. We can't get it approved by the WIA though, because it doesn't have an on the field component. And with the season going on, we felt like a virtual clinic would still give people some sound, information and some resources. And I think, these podcasts are going to be great. And, Cameron, keep doing a good job with the Indianhead. I can tell that you're putting a lot of effort into that. And, we're kind of doing the same thing here. So we've got some really good associations doing some really good work to help with everything we need to do to make officials, be better for the kids, because that's what it's all about. Is the game of football is all about the kids playing the game, and all of us have fun on Friday nights. So thanks for being with us tonight.
Yeah, there's 2 teams on the field, but no one really ever talks about the third team, and that's the officiating crew. And if we're not having fun in the game, we're doing something wrong. We should love what we're doing, and we should love talking about football like we're doing tonight. And again, this is a game, and I think you're right. We want to be good at what we're doing, and we want to enjoy this. Appreciate the time that we had to talk tonight, and this is good stuff.
Yeah, thanks so much. And Cole, this was a fun one.
Yeah, thanks so much, Cam, for coming on. We look forward to that conversation with Brian down the road. So I guess, Brian, until next time, this is another episode of the 4th and 1 podcast. Good luck on Friday night, everyone, and have a great start to your season.
All right. Great job.
So let me ask you this.